Hello, my name's Donna Cross. I'm from Edith, Cowan University, and it's my pleasure to talk to you today about the Cyber Friendly Schools project, how it was conducted, and particularly what the results were after the 3 years of its implementation. I'll be presenting with my colleagues Trish Cardoso and Teresa Shaw, who will be describing different parts of the program as we show you our tour of what we completed during this project. First up, though, I'd like to talk to you about the design of the project and what we did to try and determine whether an intervention focusing on the online bullying behaviours of young people, what sorts of things did we put in place to try and test it? What did we try to do to intervene and prevent that cyberbullying from occurring? And particularly, what were the results as a result of all of that work? But this study, as you can see here, was a 3-year randomised controlled trial, and that means that we randomly selected schools and we randomly assigned them to condition. In our study, we had 35 non-government schools who participated in the study, and we followed a cohort of Year 8 students, and in Australia, Year 8 students are 13 years of age, for 3 years to the end of Year 10, to determine whether or not the resources that we put in place changed their cyberbullying behaviours and other behaviours that were seen to be protective or that would enhance the likelihood of those behaviours. We targeted many levels within our study. We targeted a whole school level, we engaged with families, we mobilised student leaders, and in particular we targeted students themselves. We used involved student leaders, Year 10 students, to take a leadership role in implementing many of the whole school activities that we thought were important and that would lead to a change in the cyberbullying behaviours of young people, and particularly to help young people find supports that might prevent or manage this behaviour. Our cyber leaders were trained in many ways, and Trish Cardoso will be talking later in our presentation this morning about the ways we mobilised them and what we did with those students, and particularly what we found and would do again, or we would repeat it as a result of that. The web-based resource that we designed to be implemented in intervention schools in this study contained a number of components. There was the multimedia that students had produced as part of our resource development. In addition to that, we had lots of student leader related resources. We provided materials for the classroom teacher to support the ways that they might encourage young people to use the online resources. We provided a whole school manual that gave schools ideas from newsletter items through to ways that they might change their policies to ensure that their children were protected and that their staff were protected. And then we provided lots of other resources such as ongoing pieces of information about their students' behaviour that would help drive the sorts of decision making that schools need when they rely on evidence. And of course, in addition to that, we had a website that we designed specifically for families, particularly for parents, to give them some ideas and some consistent messages so that the content that was being addressed at school could also be understood and followed by families. The online resource was divided into 5 major areas that we thought were important for students to address. And these areas, as you can see here, included the sorts of places young people were going, so the context. So places like the online environments, social networking sites would be examples of the places that young people might be experiencing positive and negative online behaviours. The sorts of contacts that they might have in that environment, obviously positive but also negative, and the sorts of behaviours that they could expect to engage in that environment. So things like netiquette. What should I be doing when this occurs, and how might be the most appropriate ways to respond. We also talked to them a lot about their digital reputation and protecting their privacy in the module related to confidentiality. And of course, their behaviour generally online, the way that they manage their emotions when events happen. And of course, last but not least, the sorts of content that we covered related to the sorts of situations that young people are likely to experience, giving them lots of practice in as real an environment as we could so that they could then apply these skills and their knowledge should that situation arise when they were using that media in their home or elsewhere. You can see here this was the opening page for our Cyber Friendly Schools site, so young people could sign up here, engage within the site, as could adults, either teachers or parents as well. The sorts of information that we thought was important for young people to address in this environment was issues related to mental health first aid. Because there are no adults in this space, it's really important that young people know how to care for each other. So we had a module, for example, called Helping Me, Helping You, that's about giving young people skills and ideas about the things that they can do if they see their friends experiencing difficulties. We also focused on mobilising bystanders in the online environment and developing and applying empathy skills. We looked at the sorts of influences that young people might have to engage in negative behaviours, and then provided some ideas about how they might counter those influences appropriately. We helped them to manage their privacy. We reminded them of issues related to the law and how they might affect them with the sorts of actions that they might take online. We also gave them practice in decision making, and of course with a harm minimisation approach, but most importantly trying to help them protect their digital reputation in the longer term. You can see here this is a page taken from the website, so students could readily access the sort of content that they wanted based on these icons, as could families and teachers alike. This is an example of one of the modules that the children accessed. This one is looking at digital reputation, and young people in this particular module focused on what is it about them that's already online that is positive, but also if there are negative pieces of information, or perhaps there's images or content that they might not like others to see. This would help them determine what's available currently that the World Wide Web can see, and perhaps remind them of actions that they can take to set privacy settings, for example, in their social networking sites like Facebook. This particular module, called Connect, Extend, Challenge, was focused very much on Facebook. When we were conducting this research, Facebook was the major site that young people were spending time, and this was a site that they reported that they were experiencing both positive behaviours but also negative behaviours related to bullying in particular, or aggression online. I mentioned before the importance of mental health first aid, and this module, called Helping Me, Helping You, focused very much on the sorts of supports that you could provide and deliver to friends or others that you might see online that are experiencing some difficulties. The last module that I'd like to show you this morning is one called Cyberships, and this module focused on friendship patterns and the ways that young people engage with others online, and giving them ideas about the ways that they could interact with people maybe that they haven't met face to face, to ensure that they can maintain their privacy and ensure that the friendships remain positive and that they can take positive actions if they are not going in the way that they would like. So all of these modules together were the sorts of spaces that young people could go into. There were 9 modules overall that young people could access. In the monitoring of the implementation of this project, as you'll see later when we look at the results, on average schools implemented about 3 of these 9 modules. So we know that they were not implemented as extensively as we'd hoped. And we feel that trying to fit cyberbullying prevention in amongst other content that teachers are required to address with children in years 8 and years 9 is very challenging. So I think one of the issues that we need to be conscious of in further development of these resources and testing of those is to look at ways that they can be more easily implemented by teachers in the time that they have available in health education or other learning areas where it might be implemented. So overall, I've given you a snapshot of the 8 modules that comprise the intervention that was delivered to students by the classroom teachers. And obviously this was in addition to the resources that were also being implemented at a whole school level to address cyberbullying. Trish Cardoso is going to be talking now with you about the Student Cyber Leader resource and how we were able to mobilise those young people to be a catalyst within the school environment to keep whole school activities on the focus of each of the schools that were involved.